This is AA Beyond Belief, the podcast, episode 107. Hello, I'm here with William B. and Ernest B., and they are from Quebec and recently started an AA meeting in Montreal. And they sent me an email letting me know that they wanted to be on the secular AA meeting list, so I sent that on to Courtney to add their group. And I thought, hey, I'd love to hear about your group in Montreal, so I asked them to come on a podcast. How you guys doing?
Oh, we're doing good. We're doing good.
Good.
Just a bit of a correction, John. We're not actually in Montreal, in a city about, what would you say, Ernest, about 40, 50 kilometers south of Montreal, Saint-Jean-sur-Richelieu.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's a city of about 100,000 people.
Okay, nice. So let's get the story together about how this group started. And maybe we might want to start with what got you interested in a secular AA meeting to begin with?
Okay. You want to go ahead, Ernest, for a bit?
No, we both, I'm an atheist and Will is an agnostic. And when we used to go to meeting, we stick together, but we had a hard time to cope with the God business. And I talked to him about that there was some group around the world that there was agnostic and atheist group. So I did some research and I said we should start a group like this because there was about 12 group in Toronto, and I knew they had an argument with the district in Toronto. They were booted out, so now they're back in because the AA changed the way they look at it. So I said we should start a group near Montreal because some other people like us,
Yeah, and so you see, what happened was about 2 years ago, I'd say, we tried to start a group with basically with an accent on, WAFT, W-A-F-T, Atheists and Alcoholics, Free Thinkers, and AA Agnostica. But that didn't attract people. I don't know why. Maybe it's because it didn't seem like AA or was too alternative or something like this. But now that, as Ernest said, AA seems to be trying to welcome some of these free thinkers and agnostics, atheists. We started this again. We've only been in this about a month, right? And so we had gone to another group that got started before us. In another city called Saint Hyacinthe, and they're called Libre Penseurs, Free Thinkers. And this is in French. Both of our meetings are in French. We don't have an English meeting yet in Quebec, as far as we know. But there probably will be one soon in Montreal. And so that's how we started this time. We started it a couple of years ago. It didn't work, but this time it seems to be working. We're at our last meeting, we had 8 people, which was pretty good. Yeah, and don't forget that in Quebec, it's been very, very close to the Catholic Church for, generations. So even now, with a more secular attitude that people have in the new generations, since, let's say, 1960, still, they're kind of sticking with the church and the way it works,
I was wondering about that. I was wondering what the typical meeting is like in your area. Do they, for example, use the Lord's Prayer and all that kind of stuff?
Generally, they use the Lord's Prayer at the end. They start with the Serenity Prayer, and then they finish with the Lord's Prayer.
Okay, so that's pretty typical. That's how it is around here, too.
Yeah, but this, too, has been changing because I know there's one meeting I go to, a French one, which used to say the Lord's Prayer at the end. Now they're talking about just using the responsibility declaration or the unity declaration to close the meeting.
Yeah, that's actually a good way to do it. We're doing that now at our area assembly here in Missouri. We're closing more and more with the responsibility statement. So, and also we do that at our district meetings now, which is really nice.
Yeah.
It's just it makes everybody more comfortable,
Also, what gave us the chance to start this year is because we are allowed to put our meeting on the listing of AA. Before, we didn't have any place to advertise our group, so that's why it didn't start. But this time, the district and the region AA, they put us on the listing, so people see it and they question about it. They talk to us about it.
And what's the name of your group?
It's called Esprit Ouvert. That's French for open mind.
Okay,
I like that. And what's your format?
Well, the format is discussion meeting.
Okay.
Everybody is allowed like 3 minutes that they can talk about anything. We have a subject, like maybe discuss the step 3 or step 4, and the step are modified. We modified the step too. All the steps have been modified. So the people have the step in front of them, and we discuss one step, and they can talk also about something that they'd like to talk about that happened during the week or something like that.
Mm-hmm. So did you guys modify the steps yourselves, or did you take it from someone else who's done the modification?
Well, Saint-Hyacinthe is the group that started before us, which is about 50 kilometers from here, and they had modified the steps based on the step that's been modified in Toronto, and they were so good, so we didn't change anything. We used those ones.
Okay, so when you open your meeting, do you read those steps?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
And do we have the paper here someplace?
Yeah, we use. We have the step, but we read the step. We read
the method,
how it works, but which has been modified as well.
Oh, really?
And the tradition have been modified for tradition 2 and tradition I think 11. That was some higher power there. So, but the other all the traditions are the same,
So I'm interested about how you modified how it works.
Okay, well, we'll have to find the paper to tell you that. Okay, so John, just give us a second because we have it right in front of us. We got a briefcase full of all that stuff that we eating, and here it is. Okay. Yeah. So your meeting. What's the name of your guys' meeting?
Here in Kansas City, our group is. We got a couple of them, but the group I go to, my home group, is We Agnostics.
We Agnostics, okay.
And then we also have a Free Thinkers group, and we have a secular speaker meeting.
Ah, yes, okay. So here I've got the paper, but this is in French. I don't know if that's going to make much sense to the people who are listening, but we could sort of translate it as we go along. Our method, first the method. This is called the secular version of how it works, the method in French, okay, used by the group Esprit Ouvert, Open Mind. This is adapted from the how it works and the 12 steps as shown in Alcoholics Anonymous. So our method, it constitutes a program of recovery for alcoholics with the desire to stop drinking and looking for help in the Esprit Ouvert group, okay? This method requires that we be rigorously honest towards ourselves and that we assume entire responsibility for our behaviors and our attitudes. These are the elements, the crucial elements for our recovery. The stories of our lives reveal, in general way, who we were, what happened to us, and how we are now. The way we are now. If you want to really want to recover, and you are ready to do so, and leave your comfort zone, if you're interested in working very hard to change your habits and your way of life, you're ready to put into operation these steps. And the steps have been changed. I'm not going to read all the steps, but I'll tell you the ones that have been changed.
Okay, the step that have been changed is number 2. It says we came to accept that we need help to face our problem with alcohol. So that's why we remove God. And step 3 is the same as it was before. And step 4, we proceeded without fearless about our own inventory. But I have go ahead.
Okay.
I have a cold.
Okay. Okay. We proceeded without fearless in a fearless moral inventory of ourselves, recognizing our egocentric behaviors, our fears, our self-pity, our resentments, and our weaknesses, that these things could have contributed to our alcoholism. Step 3, though, we did remove the word God or higher power.
Yeah.
We have decided to join a group of persons having succeeded to being in becoming abstinent. That's all. A group of persons. That's all that one says. And 5 is we spoke without reserve to ourselves and another person the details of our inventory. 6, we agreed to abandon our destructive behaviors towards ourselves and others.
Oh, I like that.
7, we searched with humility, honesty, and an open mind to change our behaviors and our habits.
Oh, I like it.
To become, in a way, to become abstinent. And 8, we made up a list of all the persons that we had harmed, and we agreed to repair our
wrongdoing.
Our wrongdoings
Mm-hmm.
Towards each of these persons. And then 9, we repaired our wrongdoings wherever possible with these persons, except when doing so would risk harming them or other persons. This is just a rough translation, sorry.
Mm-hmm. That's fine.
10, we continued our personal inventory and promptly admitted our wrongs as soon as we became aware of them. 11, we continued to look inward inside ourselves.
Oh, I like that.
To find our place, our legitimate place, and try to find our our rightful place in life, as well as a force that could realize, that could bring about this change.
Very good. I love that. I've not heard a step 11 quite like that one before. That's really good.
And the 12, having recovered by by the practice of these steps, we tried to transmit this message to other alcoholics and to put in practice these principles in all our affairs.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's it. That's about it. And then the method has also been changed. God is not referred to in the method.
Right.
Anyway, so except I think 1 or 2 places, but it's pretty well secular.
Yeah.
And we have a policy that if people want to come, anybody can come. It's a closed meeting for alcoholics, but if they're believers, they can speak about their beliefs and how that and their power or their higher power, whatever. But that's about it. There's not going to be any prayers. There's no prayers to open, no prayers to close. It's not associated with any religion, and we want to keep it that way.
Very good. That's great. It kind of creates a neutral environment where everybody is comfortable regardless of what they believe or don't believe. And, at our group now, I just noticed that, hardly ever does the topic of belief even come up anymore. It's just a regular AA meeting. I think anybody would be comfortable.
Yes. And so what we in our discussion, we try to put the accent on, whether the step or whatever concept, AA concept we're discussing, or if you don't want to talk about the step, you can talk about your week or what happened today or something that's bothering you and how it's related to your program as you're practicing it. And that's what we do.
And so most of the people that you attend your meeting, do they mostly identify as atheists and agnostic? Is that who you're attracting?
Most of the people that we have attracted so far are either atheists, agnostics, or they just kind of want to get away from the religious side of regular AA meetings here. And actually, we have meetings in English, we have one in this town, but there's a lot in Montreal. And the English meetings are gradually, I think, going towards the same format where they try to avoid too much religion in there.
Wow.
Finding that the young generation is not interested.
Yeah, I think that's really true.
Yeah.
You know, a little side note. I was recently contacted by a woman who has a small treatment center here in Kansas City, and she was interested in having an AA meeting in her facility. And I was talking to her. I said, well, would you mind if we had a meeting that we didn't pray? And she said, oh, yeah, that'd be perfectly fine. She says, I think that people would like that a lot better. So I think that we're going to probably take meetings to that center. And that'll be interesting because it'll be a secular meeting. But, the people there might very well be believers, which is totally fine.
Mm-hmm. One thing, the schools. Weren't there some schools, Ernest, that the AA here wanted to bring the thing in schools?
Yeah, well, there was public information. They went to a school, and now all the school here, they removed the crucifix, and they in all the school in Quebec now there's no more crucifix, and they teach multi-religion, like they talk about to the kid about all that is available, the different religion available, like they talk about each one of them a little bit to the children. So they wanted to go there and make some information about AA, but they told them that they would prefer not having AA coming to the school because it's too centered on one God, and they don't agree with that policy. So they were not allowed to go to the school and make some public information.
Isn't that interesting?
The biggest problem we have in our group is that people in a normal AA meeting are very eager about the group. They think that we do some wrongdoing to AA. So every member that came to our group, after one meeting, they said, I really like that. But at first, they cannot close,
Yeah.
Yeah, at first they were a little bit too, they were shy of it. They thought we're going to destroy the place, break up AA and all this and that, kind of like the rebels,
Right.
Like Wild One comes into town on his motorcycle and breaks everything up like Marlon Brando, But no, we're not like that. We're given an alternative and everybody's welcome. And so once they come, they feel more easy about it, That's it. And then they decide whether they want to come again or not. But quite a few, there's a believer we've got in there now. He says he's coming back. He believes in God, but he likes the way we do things, and it's less, he said it's even less conflict than the meetings he goes to at the center where we have most of our meetings. There's less conflict and less controversy.
Yeah.
Because, we don't fight with anybody.
Right.
Discussion, you get your amount of time, and then we go on to the next person, and the next, and then we come back. That's all. Come back, if everybody's spoken, we start again.
So I guess it sounds to me like the Human Rights Tribunal outcome in Toronto kind of opened things up all over Canada.
Yeah,
it did. Yeah.
Because you can read those alternative steps, and it's not a problem.
That's right. In fact, our district, what do they call it? District committee member, came to one of our first meetings, and he said everything's fine. And we sent in. He said, did he actually send in the paper?
Yeah, he had to do a report to the region. He came in to the meeting. He was sent by the region to do inspection of the group, and report to see if he was anything wrong. Yeah.
And now we're registered with the area, the region, the area, and we're waiting for a number from New York.
We got it.
We got our number from New York.
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't know. Okay.
Oh, you're set then.
Oh, we're set up. Yeah.
That's great.
Okay.
The other day, when I do speak in a group, like they asked me to be the speaker, I found out that if I say right open that I'm an atheist at the end of the meeting, I have a hard time to leave the place because everybody is asking questions and they don't agree with it, but they ask questions about it. They don't know what it is.
They're interested, aren't they? I think that's great. I find the same thing. I spoke at a traditional meeting here not too long ago, and I think the people were interested. Even the ones who didn't agree with me, they wanted to hear, how the heck do I do this? As one who doesn't believe in a God.
The big question, they say, how can you stay sober without God? That's the big question.
Well, I'd say the same way as you, because there really isn't a God.
Yeah, but they can't put in their mind,
Right.
And when he said, when you have something that you can't fix, that making you crazy, or something happened, somebody died, and you're grieving. How can you talk to your higher power if you don't have one? I said, I have a higher power. I have the group,
Yeah, and you can actually, you can talk to them and they can talk back.
Yes.
Exactly. I said, with God, I never have an answer back.
Exactly. That is so funny. Yeah, it's like, I think people get way too hung up sometimes on the whole supernatural higher power thing. It's like, hey, don't you guys forget that there's things that you actually have to do?
Well, that's
they almost say to you, how can you breathe?
Right.
But that seems to be one of the problems. Yeah, that too much emphasis. I don't dispute anybody's beliefs, and if they believe in God, fine. If it works for you, fine. Yeah. But the thing is, if you're putting everything on God's shoulders and you're not doing the work, that's why you're not recovering. I
told them, you look at step 6 and step 7. Step 7, you ask God to remove all your character defects. But I said, I have to work on it.
Yeah.
What's also interesting? It seems like the last few weeks I've been talking to atheists about the steps, and those two steps, 6 and 7, have been coming up frequently. It's like I think that there's almost an advantage with us, and I think maybe the rest of AA might want to pick up on this, because we have to really think about those steps, right? And what we do, because there's no external force that's going to be taking these defects away. So we have to kind of think about, and I like the way that you interpreted those steps.
I have to do the work. Nobody's going to do it for me. I can't show my problem to nobody.
Right. So I'd like for you guys, if you could email me a copy of your steps and traditions, and also the version of how it works. And you can send them in French. That's perfectly fine. We'll post them up there on the on our website with the podcast.
Okay.
What we could do is I could do a translation.
Mm-hmm.
If you want on paper.
Okay.
What I'll do is I'll scan how it works and the tradition and the steps, and I'll send it to you on a PDF format.
Okay.
So that way you can put them somewhere.
Yep.
You can use it as you wish.
Yep. And it's actually, I think it would be nice to have a version in French, because, there's a lot of French-speaking areas in the world that could probably use it. So
that's what I have to do. I will scan it as it is. And send it to you.
Awesome. Yeah. So I think this is going to be a great experience. We started our group. This will be our 5th year, and it's just been really amazing to watch it unfold. Yeah. And, it grows in starts and spurts. And it's like, we had a very slow, gradual growth in the first couple of years. And then it just seemed to kind of take off. And we're still, I think, growing a little bit here and there.
Yeah. Here in Quebec, now there's 2 groups officially open. There's one that's opening right now, right on the south shore near Montreal. It's about 5 kilometers from Montreal in Saint-Lambert. So there's going to be 3 groups in Quebec in the near future. And maybe there's one that's going to open in Montreal.
Very good. Very good. Well, that's fantastic, and I can see more happening. And I'm really happy to see that things are opening up in Canada overall, because the AA in Canada was really hard on these groups. They were hard in Vancouver and Toronto, and I guess even in Quebec about not wanting to list these groups. And now it's like, oh, they better list them. And what's probably cool though too is that they're finding that, oh, hey, these guys are pretty much like us.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No difference, hardly any different. No.
One thing that seems to be a problem here is a lot of people I don't know about a lot, but a certain proportion of people who want to go to the AA meetings don't want any changes to be made in the steps or any changes to be made in the tradition or in the method. But actually, it's just as well that the changes are made, because if the changes weren't made, it would just be the average, regular kind of theistic group that we always go to, So if you want to have an alternative, have an alternative. But then they'll say, well, then you've got to start your own fellowship. Well, that's pretty hard to do,
Mm-hmm. And we don't have to anyway, because we actually were in on the beginning starting this thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly.
And the steps were being interpreted from the very beginning anyhow. So we're just continuing with that tradition.
But like Bill said, on the book AA Comes of Age, at page 81, there's a paragraph there where Bill says, if you want to change the steps, do it. If it helps you to stop drinking, you do it, go ahead. But he say it openly, So when you talk to people, and I say, go see page 81 and come back to me and we'll talk about it, Then he says, yeah, you're right. Bill was open to that. So,
well, what we do at our group, we don't read the steps, and we haven't written our own alternative, but we have had individual members of the group write their own version. And we have those in a notebook. But when we talk about the steps, we usually read from the Alternative 12 Steps book, or some other secular book. Now there's also the 12 Secular Steps is a new book that came out, and we like to read from those books to do the steps. Because if you do read the original one, unfortunately, because of the God word, it's just a hurdle to jump over. You have to kind of do the mental gymnastics to try to translate it. So it's just better just to have the plain language right out there for people.
Yeah.
We don't have any of those books that you were just mentioned in French here. That's the thing. Since this group is a French group, to read those steps, we'd have to translate those too.
Do you know Roger C. from AA Agnostica?
Yeah.
I'm wondering if he might have some French versions of those books. I'll have to ask him, because he's French Canadian.
Yeah. Well, I never had a chance to talk to him really. I only read about his newsletters. Almost every week he sends ones to my email. That's what I was doing for a year, reading those. And I cut my meeting down to one a week, because I was not. I didn't feel good going to the normal AA meeting. I was reading some speaker all across the world that were secular speaker, like.
Right.
And to stay sober, and I was going fine. But I wanted to open one, because I said there's got to be some other people like me. It's impossible that I'm the only one in Quebec,
Right, absolutely. And it's nice to have that personal, face-to-face human contact, and make connections with people too in your own community.
Yeah, that's what helps me to stay sober. So the meetings, whatever, the ones I can go to, they help me to stay sober. If I go a couple of weeks without a week, or even a week without a meeting, I don't feel good.
Yeah, I think I do better going regularly, and I tend to do right now about 3 a week, I guess, for the most part. So sometimes I might miss a couple, but mostly.
Same as me. That's about 2-3 a week. Now that I have that group, it's we used to drive to Saint-Hyacinthe, which is an hour drive, for have a secular meeting, and do that one we have here. But then I go to another normal meeting, but I keep my mouth shut because they know they look at me as being the one who opened the group, the bad group in Saint-Jean. That's the guy who opened it,
Right.
I'm like a target when I walk into an AA room.
Yeah.
For some people, not for some of the people.
Some of the people, but
just some, yeah.
I'm a bad guy.
No, I hear you. I know. I think that the majority of the people around here are pretty okay with me and my group. And there might be one occasional person who might not like us. And usually around here, they won't say too much. They'll talk behind my back maybe, but they won't. They won't.
I found like on the west end of Canada or any English province, the thing is that they were already at ease with other religion around them, like Anglican and Protestant and all that. So, but in Quebec, it's just they were so under the religion were driving them crazy. They were everywhere in their life. So it came after a while. It came that you couldn't escape. Not going to church, you were like a guy with the devil. So to get out of that
predicament,
yeah.
So the people are afraid to leave. They think if they leave, they don't talk. They don't believe in God. That something bad's going to happen to them. They really believe that.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
I find that really interesting. So, so Quebec, I know you're tight. You like when you were talking about the public schools not having prayer and everything. Are you saying that fairly recent, even in recent times, that the public schools in Quebec were teaching religion and stuff like that, or they had prayer in the public schools?
Well, in the public school, in my age, I'm 73, but now my son is 38. He haven't been baptized, and he doesn't know any prayer because in school they don't teach any. But now they got away with that. But when I was going to school, they had the catechism. You had to pass a test to go to get your first communion. It was really. They bring you to Thursday. Every Thursday they used to bring us to church to go to confession. The next day we go to the mass, but now they got away with all this. And the church, the nun in Quebec are not allowed to have the old dress, the dress they had before with the cap on their heads. They got away with all this, and priests they dress like normal people now. So they, little bit by little bit, they get away from the big God, that watching you.
The control of the church.
Everywhere you
yeah.
So God is with you, except if you go to the bathroom,
It's like the same thing. The same thing happened in Ireland. It's like the Catholic Church had such a grip on Ireland, but not so much anime.
No, they got away with this. Now they're getting away with this, and the young people, I see my son. He doesn't have any barrier. So he lives and he's happy. There's no pressure from any supposedly God that if you masturbate yourself, that you're going to go to hell.
Right. Well, thank you guys so much for coming on this podcast and telling me about your group. I loved this conversation. It's so much fun for me to speak with people from areas that I've never been, and it's like I learn a little bit about that part of the world. And you guys just seem like a lot of fun. If I'm ever in Quebec, I want to check out your meeting.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy. I met you through the net. It was just like I didn't know it was going to end like this. And I'm very happy about the way it happened. I'm very pleased I met you over the net.
Same here, likewise. So Happy New Year to both of you. I wish you all the very, very best in 2019.
You too, John. Have a good 24.
Thank you very much.
that concludes this episode of AA Beyond Belief, the podcast. Thank you for listening, everybody. I appreciate your support.